He reached the summit, and opened the box. What did he find there?
Welcome to Tale House. Stories are told and lived.
10 years ago, in the golden wheat field stretching behind the village, two boys sat. Maxwell was struggling to build a small windmill out of wooden sticks and twine. His small hands were covered in minor scratches, and sweat dripped from his forehead as he balanced the blades against the wind. Beside him, Julian, dressed in embroidered silk, held a perfect, pre-made windmill his father had bought for him from the city, crafted from shining metal. Julian, bored. "Why do you bother, Max? Look at mine. It's beautiful, spins faster, and all I had to do was ask my father for it." Maxwell, determined. "But I want to know how it spins. I want to build it with my own hands so it truly belongs to me." Julian, laughing, kicking Maxwell's wooden toy. "In this world, gold buys time and effort. The smart ones buy, and the fools build." In that moment, Grandfather Elias watched from a distance in silence. He knew then that one was building the muscles of his soul, while the other was building castles made of sand. The silence inside the decrepit cabin was broken only by the rhythmic crackling of wood in the hearth, and the howling wind that battered the wooden walls like a beast seeking entry. In the center of the room stood Maxwell, his eyes burning with a restless ambition to change his life. Opposite him sat his grandfather, Elias, a man whose skin was a map of 1,000 journeys and whose eyes held the stillness of a deep well. But there was a third presence in the room, Julian. Julian sat on a polished stool he had brought himself, leaning back with a look of casual boredom. His clothes were made of fine, midnight blue silk, and his hands, soft and manicured, toyed with a gold coin. He was the son of the valley's wealthiest merchant. A young man who had never known a day of thirst that wasn't quenched by fine wine or a day of hunger that wasn't satisfied by a feast. "You are truly going to listen to this, Max?" Julian asked, his voice dripping with honeyed condescension. "The old stories? The treasure on the mountain? My father has 5 vaults filled with gold that actually exists. Why climb a rock for a ghost story?" Elias ignored the interruption. He reached into a weathered satchel and drew a piece of worn leather. He placed it on the table with the reverence one might show a holy relic. "This map, Maxwell," Elias said, his voice a low rumble, "will lead you to the most precious thing the earth holds. But the path is not for the faint of heart. There is one condition: you must not look at it until you are drenched in the sweat of exhaustion. Only when your body is broken will your eyes be opened." Maxwell reached for the leather, but Julian's laughter cut through the air like a dull blade. "Look at it, Max. It's a scrap of garbage. It's blank. Grandfather is selling you a dream because he has nothing else to give." Maxwell ignored him, staring at the leather. It was indeed blank, a deafeningly silent piece of parchment. "Are you mocking me, grandfather? How can a void lead me to anything?" Elias leaned forward, the firelight dancing in his cracked spectacles. "True maps, my boy, do not reveal themselves to the idle who wait for clarity while sitting still. Go to the peak of Echo Mountain, and at sunset, you shall know the way. The choice is yours, the silk of the valley, or the stone of the peak." Julian stood up, adjusting his cloak. "Come on, Max. My carriage is outside. My parents are hosting a gala tonight. There is music, warmth, and actual wealth. Leave the old man to his charcoal and his fairy tales. Don't waste your life chasing sweat. Maxwell looked at Julian's soft hands, then at his grandfather's scarred ones. He felt the weight of the blank map. No, Julian, Maxwell whispered. The silk feels like a shroud. I need to know what's on this map. Maxwell set out at dawn. For the first few miles, Julian followed him on a fine white horse, shouting from the safety of the dirt path. You're a fool, Maxwell. Julian called out, shielding his eyes from the rising sun. I'm going back to the estate to have a hot bath and a 3-course meal. If you change your mind, the gates are open. My father can find you a job, something easy. Something that doesn't involve blisters. Maxwell didn't look back. He kept his eyes on the jagged silhouette of Echo Mountain. By the second day, the path Julian's carriage could travel had vanished. The world became a vertical labyrinth of shale and thorns. The ascent was brutal. The sun hung above him like a searing furnace, baking the moisture from his pores. His provisions, a few crusts of bread and a flask of water, were gone by noon. His throat felt as though it had been lined with sandpaper. Every step was a battle against gravity. He fell for the 10th time, his knees slamming into sharp stones. The impact sent a jolt of white-hot pain up his spine. He looked at his hands. They were shredded, his blood mixing with the gray dust of the mountain. Why, he wheezed, his voice a ghost of itself. Julian was right. I am a fool. I am dying for a blank piece of leather. He pulled the map from his tunic, intending to tear it to pieces and throw it to the wind. He wanted to surrender, to crawl back to the valley and beg Julian's father for a life of quiet, unearned comfort. But as he held the map, a heavy drop of sweat, thick with the salt of his labor, fell from his brow. It landed in the center of the parchment. Maxwell froze. Where the sweat hit, a faint blue glow began to pulse. Slowly, like veins beneath skin, lines began to intertwine. They didn't draw a trail to a cave of gold. Instead, they drew the contours of a face. His face. It showed the new furrows of his brow, the grim set of his jaw, and a grit in his eyes he had never seen in his reflection back in the valley. The voice of Elias echoed in his mind. The earth gives you nothing until you give it your effort first. Maxwell realized then, the map wasn't showing him where to go. It was showing him who he was becoming. The void was only empty because he had been empty. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, he tucked the map away and began to climb again. His torn fingers finding grip where there seemed to be none. Maxwell reached the summit just as the sun began its final descent, painting the sky in violent shades of crimson and gold. At the very peak, tucked beneath a natural stone arch, sat a small iron box, rusted by centuries of rain and wind. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. The gold Julian had mocked. The fortune that would prove his struggle had a price. With shaking, bloody fingers, he forced the lid open. There were no coins. No rubies. No emeralds. Instead, nestled in a bed of velvet that had long since rotted away, was a polished silver mirror. Beneath it lay a letter. Maxwell picked up the mirror. He saw himself. He didn't see the soft, uncertain boy who had left the cabin. He saw a man whose skin was bronzed by the sun, whose shoulders were broad with the weight of the climb, and whose eyes held the hard-won peace of someone who had looked into the abyss and didn't blink. He opened the letter. His grandfather's shaky script read, "The treasure is not what you found in this box, but the man I see in this mirror right now. Look closely, Maxwell. You left as a fearful boy searching for a stroke of luck. You have returned as a patient man who knows the value of toil. Julian has his father's gold, but he will never own himself. You have wrenched your identity from the stone of this mountain. This is the gold that never rusts." Maxwell sat on the peak and wept. Not from disappointment, but from the overwhelming weight of the truth. Maxwell returned to the village at twilight. As he approached the village square, he saw Julian. Julian was sitting on a bench outside a tavern, surrounded by admirers, drinking from a gilded chalice. He looked soft, his face flushed with wine. His eyes glazed with the boredom of a life where everything was handed to him. Julian looked up and sneered. "Well, if it isn't the mountain climber. Where are your sacks of gold, Maxwell? You look like a beggar who escaped a wolf attack. Was it worth the blood?" Maxwell didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He walked past Julian with a straightened back and a gaze so piercing that Julian's smirk faltered. "I found something you can't buy, Julian," Maxwell said, his voice quiet but carrying the force of a landslide. "I found the man you're afraid to become." Maxwell entered his grandfather's cabin. Elias was waiting, the fire still crackling as if time had stood still. Maxwell placed the map, now blank once again, on the table. "I have returned, grandfather," Maxwell said. The box held only a mirror. "I realized that the treasure wasn't at the top. The treasure was the climb." Elias smiled, a slow, proud movement of his lips. "I sent you to find gold so that you would discover that your legs are stronger than the mountains. Julian lives in a prison of silk, Maxwell. He is a spectator in his own life. But you have become the architect of yours." The sage stood up and handed the parchment back to Maxwell. "Now, take this white map with you. It is yours to keep. Don't wait for me, or Julian, or the world to draw your path. You now possess the internal compass. The future is a blank page, Maxwell. It is no longer a void to fear, it is a canvas to conquer. Go and write your story with the courage of your pen and the salt of your brow." Maxwell stepped out into the cool night air. He looked at the mountain, then at the horizon. He knew now that life was not a search for hidden treasures, but a continuous journey to draw the map of the soul upon the earth. And as for Julian, he sat in the valley, counting coins he hadn't earned, wondering why, despite all his riches, he felt so incredibly empty. 10 years passed since the journey to the mountain. Maxwell didn't tuck the white map into a drawer of forgetfulness. He made it the constitution of his life. Starting from zero, he never asked for charity. He used the strength he gained from Echo Mountain to build his first workshop, which, through the salt of toil, grew into the largest construction empire in the valley. Maxwell wasn't just building houses. He was building men. He taught them that, the map only reveals itself to those who work. His name became synonymous with trust. And his legacy was not the money he gathered, but the respect he planted in people's hearts. On the other side, dark clouds gathered over Julian's estate. His father had passed away, leaving him a fortune, but he failed to leave him an internal compass. Years of drought were followed by a great economic crisis. Julian, who never learned how to face a storm or repair the ship of his own life, stood helpless. He thought gold would solve his problems as it always had for his father. But he didn't realize that gold in the hands of the weak evaporates like a mirage. His mansion was seized, and his lands were sold piece by piece to pay for his reckless debts. On a cold night, Julian stood outside the gates of his confiscated palace. Wearing the tattered remains of his silk, looking into the distance, he saw the glowing lights of Maxwell's great institution. The workers were laughing, the work never stopped. And success grew like a sturdy oak tree. He reached into his pocket and found one last gold coin. He remembered Elias's words. A treasure taken without effort is lost without regret. He realized, shivering in the cold, that Maxwell hadn't just surpassed him in wealth. He had surpassed him in the man he had built inside himself. And you, our dear viewer, are you truly investing in yourself? In your opinion, is real success born from comfort, or from effort and experience? If you enjoyed the story, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.